Austin's bleeding face on T-shirts, and I remember I love telling this story because it just seems so bizarre now. But I remember being in 5th grade, and I brought WrestleMania 13 to school, and before like 9 a.m., our teacher let us do that and show. There was a TV VCR in class, and if you showed up to school early, like you could show anybody whatever you wanted. And that sounds really bizarre to say that now. And I remember taking WrestleMania 13, fast forwarding to Austin and Brett, making sure that everybody that I was showing wrestling to, and wrestling wasn't cool at the time, and showing them the Austin's bleeding face in the sharpshooter, and being like, "Isn't this awesome?" Like as a 9-year-old or something, being like, "Look at this! Like, you've never seen anything like that?" It was like showing your friends porn or something for the first time. Like it was like I felt like I had to be the person that was going to show them this thing, and I was proud of it. Looking back, like we love that moment. We love that moment. It took Austin to another level. It made the company so much money. They printed shirts like gangbusters. I mean, wrestling it's a hardcore sport, man. Like even just pure wrestling, like whether if it's like I don't know, English style, Canadian style, Japanese style, strong style, whatever it is, like not blood and guts wrestling, but just any kind of wrestling. Even just seeing someone give a knife edge chop to someone and you know that it fucking hurt. We love it. Like there's something primal about it. There's something primordial of just like the inner monkey in all of us comes out and we glorify violence. That's what it is. Like it's stunt choreography, and I've been on the camera side. I've been in front of the camera. I've been the guy getting hit. I've bladed, I've gigged. And it's funny, like that's like something nobody wants to talk about. And I think Vice or whoever needs to dedicate a segment to who started that, who's the first one to do it, who teaches it. It's nobody taught me to do it. I just did it, and I did it a few times, and it was to earn respect of my friends. I mean, that's pretty fucked up. Watching this documentary, and seeing, and notably Jericho saying like, yeah, it was these shots to the head. You were proud to do it. The whole Harley race was like, don't do the headbutt. And Dynamite Kid does it, and he tells everybody, don't do the headbutt. And then Benoit's like, does it. It's scary because Daniel Bryan did it for so long,
Yeah. As soon as they were saying that, I was like thinking, oh, Daniel Bryan's doing that now. And he's had his fair share of injuries, and he's back wrestling. And I love it. He's my favorite wrestler, perhaps ever. Like I don't know, but he's up there for me. And it's like, man, is it worth it? You know what I mean? And like, I guess that's what confuses me. Like, I watched his match with Kofi last year, right? And it was the best match at WrestleMania, in my opinion. And the whole time I was thinking, man, like, one bad fall can like really hurt this dude. And I think about that with Edge now because Edge is back.
I know.
And it's like, why can't wrestlers walk away? I was hearing the Mick Foley podcast with Steve Austin, and he was saying that like when the doctor told him he could no longer wrestle, it was this like he didn't like he didn't have to be a tough guy anymore. And I wish sometimes like wrestlers looked out for each other a little bit better. Like I get why Daniel Bryan and Edge want to wrestle. Like I don't know if they're struggling with money or if they just have a certain lifestyle they want to keep up. But I think it's for me it's hard to watch them even acknowledging they're like some of my favorites to watch right now.
I know. Very true. I think about that. In AEW, when who was it? Sean Spears, whatever his WWE name was, I forgot. Ty Dillinger, when he hit Cody Rhodes over the head, busted him open hard way, and I remember seeing that and thinking that was. I felt upset. I was like, that's fucking stupid. Like AEW doesn't need to do that, and I was surprised. That was almost unanimous across hardcore fans that love blood and guts wrestling. Most people, and even Tony Khan was like, "We're not going to do that. That's not what we want to do." And Cody as well took the bullets and was like, "We tried it. and everyone's letting us know this isn't going to work, you know, and so we're going to respect that. And I was like, yeah, it's 2020, man. People know now, and so it's scary. But guess what? You know, I talked about WrestleMania spoilers and on Twitter, but there's a ladder match, you know, and so it's they're gonna get hurt, man. This is a career shorter. Like it just is what it is. Like the Usos don't need to be doing this. Period. You know, I've seen enough. I've seen enough ladder matches, but guess what? Like the more fucked up a spot, you know, the Young Bucks were in the most gnarliest TLC match or whatever they called it, ladder match I've ever seen. A Canadian destroyer off a ladder, bro. I
Hmm.
mean,
I remember.
there is no enough's enough when it comes to performers. There isn't, man. How many people can actually walk away from anything? I mean, it's like
Yeah.
Martin Scorsese's still making movies, you know. But even the characters that he depicts in movies, you know, like these gangsters, they never walk away. Nobody ever makes $1 million and walks away. It doesn't happen. So maybe it's in our nature to fuck ourselves up. I don't know.
Yeah. Speaking of like old ladder matches, when I watch AJ Styles now, like he's still, phenomenal. But do you don't you ever think like, man, if only he like didn't do like all those X Division matches, like or whatever those Ultimate X matches. You remember those matches
Of
with the
course,
OTNA ring?
of course,
And the thing that everyone said about that OTNA ring is it had little to no give.
yeah.
And I remember this one spot because it was such a beautiful spot where he was in the middle of the X and I forget who he was
It's
wrestling. Could
probably
have been,
Chris Sabin or somebody.
yeah,
No,
Chris, yeah,
yeah, I
something
think it
like that.
was
And they
Chris
drop kick
Sabin.
him and he does that like backflip,
Mm-hmm.
and he lands like right in the middle of the ring. And I
Mm-hmm.
think I wonder if he would like not look so beaten up now if he didn't do a lot of those spots when he was like his 20s or whatever or 30s. Who knows? But
Do you think he looks beaten up? Am I in denial about this?
well, I don't know, man. Just I'm saying, put on an old AJ Styles match from like even 5 6 years ago and watch him now. He walks up a limp sometimes, man. Like he doesn't look as good
I
as he
know.
used to. Like, and he still can pull out a good match because he's amazing. But it's just like I don't know. I feel bad for wrestlers who felt the need, especially when they were younger, to like give everything, you know. And it bums me out. Like I think what how Kurt Angle's career went, and I think how a lot of these wrestlers who aren't Undertaker, who aren't Triple H, uh, they probably went on for too long and they went on too hard because there was no breaks in wrestling. You know?
It's hard, man. I was rewatching. You mentioned this on. You texted me that WWE is re-releasing matches for free on YouTube, like WrestleMania matches. And there was Triple H and Undertaker wrestled at WrestleMania 3 times. The second time, I think it's their best, and I enjoyed it. And it was the last time. This was WrestleMania 27, I believe.
Yeah,
This was
27.
the
Yeah,
last
right after
time
Sean.
that Taker did the suicide dive outside of the ring, and it was bad. And this
Mhm.
guy must have been 49, 50 when he did that. Um, and you ask yourself why. There's a sort of it's just a matter of like there's a dopamine element to it. There's a adrenaline junkie element to it. There's a glory element to it, and never underestimate humans' desire to want to be remembered, their legacy, being a legend. Like, there's a selfishness component to Daniel Bryan, who has another baby on the way, wanting to. I mean, you saw the sick bump he just took a couple weeks ago on pay per view. A
Yeah,
devastating German suplex that you have like 10 of those in you. And when you're Daniel Bryan, who has so many miles like on his tank, on his engine, like he shouldn't be doing this. When I saw that, I'm like, it's not worth it, man. Your opening match, like, what are you doing? But I know that there's a masochistic sort of like Daniel loved it. He called that spot like it's a Daniel Bryan spot, like you know it. I don't know, like it doesn't end well for anybody, does it? Like it doesn't. I don't think it does.
yeah, no, it really doesn't. Like I think, and even like wrestlers from further back, like Roddy Piper, he died young. And I think, man, Roddy didn't like get beaten up too much, but it's just like that lifestyle is so hard on your body. And it's just like, I wish wrestling would realize that and not put these guys on the road 350 days out of the year.
Also,
You
also
know?
with Roddy, like, what, this guy probably never had kale in his life or something. Like those guys back then just went so hard, and you drank beer after a match. Who the fuck? Like, how many how many wrestlers do that now? But man, I'll tell you,
Yeah.
like I'm sorry, John Moxley, Dean Ambrose, like, whew, this guy goes real hard. But he loves it. It's all he knows. What is the exit strategy? What is the end game for these guys? Like, they have to name it in the beginning. John got out. He seems to be doing pretty good. Rock
Batista
got
got
out
out.
very
Yeah.
young. Batista got out, and is that what you have to do? Is that the exit strategy?
It's either that or become a brain neurologist like Chris Nowinski did. Um, no, it's weird, man. And there was like one part in that and this is like totally, maybe I'm off lines because I never met Benoit. Like when you hear what Benoit did, and when you hear everyone talk about how much of a good dude he was when he was younger, um, in your mind, what do you think happened?
Ooh. I have to say, what's spooky from what I saw in that documentary, because I hadn't gone back to this tragedy since 2007. I will say that when I got the news, it was before the Raw premiered, and I remember the tribute show very well, because
Me too.
the week before that they did this Vince McMahon killed himself angle, and it was like, kind of, how are they going to address this? I thought that was in poor taste at the time, and I was 20. No, I was 19. But I thought it was poor taste at the time. And needless to say, I was going to watch Raw, and so I had heard the news that it was like everybody died. My like gut reaction was a murder suicide. I was like, wait a second, that's the only way that can happen. Someone needed to have done that there. Um,
Yeah,
If
and it's weird
it didn't sound like it
looking
was a
back on
home
it.
invasion. It didn't sound like that. Otherwise, they would have led with that. And I remember feeling like, that's, oh no, right? There was an oh no, and then you see Raw, and they did the tribute show. As I was watching it, because it was live, as I was watching the tribute show, I remember feeling, at 19 years old, they should not be doing this.
Yeah,
But I
it,
remember feeling at the time that I think Vince made that call because how could he do a show, not address it, and how can he do a show and continue with that Vince McMahon was murdered angle? I think he protected himself, quite frankly, when he did that. And I think he was like, I rather do this tribute show than have to address that storyline that we did last time. I think it was that. I think it was that. The one that sticks with me the most, like the kind of confessional, when all the wrestlers are paying tribute, is Edge. Have you seen that?
yeah,
Edge, you could see it in his eyes. He knew. He knew, because what he's saying is, he's like, this doesn't make sense. And how could this happen? And he's like, he looks like a hostage. He doesn't really want to talk about paying tribute to Chris Benoit. I think he knew. I think he knew. And how could you not? Like, how could your brain not go there? And so a couple hours later, it's confirmed. But to answer your question, that's how I felt at the time, and I had not revisited that. So watching this Viceland documentary, and you ask yourself, like, what went on through his head? It seemed premeditated to me, right? Like, it seemed like
yeah,
he knew he was going to do it before he did it. I used to think maybe he hurt his wife Nancy and was like, oh fuck, what have I done? And he took out his son and he killed himself out of guilt. I used to think that. I thought that the whole time until I saw this documentary. And now I feel like, oh no, what's sickening is he premeditated this for a long time. And one thing that the documentary suggests is, after Eddie died, maybe Chris Benoit was already dead in a lot of ways. I will say that, and this is the first time I've ever heard this, and I feel really guilty saying this. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, and I don't want to start a rumor. Um, but think about this, and I don't know if you've thought about this.
I
But
think I know where you're going, but you
oh,
can
oh my
finish it.
gosh, that documentary sort of suggested to me, and whatever, man, that there was something deeper on a Brokeback Mountain level between Chris Benoit and Eddie that only they knew. And I thought of Jake Gyllenhaal, who in the movie Heath Ledger passes away abruptly, and it's terrible. And then it becomes like the third act becomes about grief, right?
Hmm.
Um, Chris Benoit crying in Vicky Guerrero's arms in Vicky's house, and even Vicky's just
Next
like,
to Eddie's pillow. Yeah.
yeah, and even Vicky's like, God damn, dude, like, don't cry so much. I
And
think,
Chavo
and,
said
and,
that.
and with all due respect, my brother, JR dies, I'll fall to my knees and I'll cry for sure, you know. Um, Dave dies, one of my best friends, like, I'll be wrecked. But I think the reaction that Chris took is the reaction I would have if something happened to Claire. You
Yeah.
know, that's just a whole nother level of gnarliness. Um, and so, is that possible? Is the question. And if it is, it could explain how, inside Chris's heart, he wanted to go right after that. And maybe
Yeah.
he resented himself and Nancy, and I don't know. I don't know, but how could you leave that off the table? Like, homosexuality in their era. I mean, didn't Chris Canyon kill himself? And he was a
Yeah.
homosexual that was in the closet or something. I mean, it,
Mhm.
it,
And
it
in wrestling, it was kind of like you got picked on a lot. Like remember Orlando Jordan? I think he was bi. I could be wrong, but
yeah,
I remember the rumor was, and he got picked on so much that he had to like kind of leave. Like
yeah.
for wrestling,
Did you
in that
think?
time,
Did you think I was gonna go there?
yeah, 100%. Because when I was watching the documentary, I kind of thought the same thing. And then Chavo has
Wow.
that line in
What
the
does he say?
documentary where he goes, the way he was crying made me think of like the way someone cries for a spouse.
Oh, I don't remember
And
that.
it made me think like Chavo, I think, is kind of implying something there. He just doesn't want to say it.
How could he say it? How could he say it?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he doesn't want to say it, but it's just and no one knows. Like, we're never gonna know this thing. This is all hearsay from us, or just stuff we're interpreting. Like, can kind of see. But I thought the same thing, and going back to what Benoit did ultimately is I thought the same thing as you. Like, maybe it was like a fit of rage. Not that it would make it any better, but I thought it was that. But watching the documentary, you realize not only did he kill them, he didn't kill himself right afterwards. He thought about wrestling that Sunday,
Yeah,
and that to me says like, I know CTA maybe was part of the reason, but I think
for sure.
I don't I think it was him that did it ultimately. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, I know. Even Jericho and Chavo will say that's not him. That wasn't him. Um,
Yeah.
and David Benoit will say that wasn't him. Oof. There was like a premeditated component to it that is shocking, and the fact that it took place over 3 days. Um, Vince has said it too, and it sounds bad coming from Vince McMahon. Um, I think he has to feel culpable, or at least in denial about something. But he did say it's not an act of roid rage, where rage is sort of like this moment in time. He's like, this took place over 3 days. Um,
Yeah.
how could CTE not play a factor, especially when you look at the violence in the football community with these guys who essentially lose themselves and like are treated like dogs. They're treated like pit bulls, and it's terrible. And so I don't know, that documentary. I had to. I thought about it in that first part with Eddie passing. Um, I understand I understand the brotherhood and the love of like a fellow compatriot, and just how intense someone in the foxhole that's with you is. It's love. It's love like no other. It's possible that maybe there was something else between them. It's possible. And if Chris was capable of an atrocity like this, who knows what other secrets he was capable of keeping from the public. and it changes the context of that WrestleMania 20 celebration, man. It really does when you look
Yeah,
back at that. I don't
yeah,
want.
yeah,
I'm not married to this theory. It is like an out there theory, but I felt like the subtext was there, and quite frankly, like um, it seems a little obvious, you know.
yeah,
Yeah, and it's not the
yeah.
most, and it wouldn't be the most shocking thing about all this, you know.
Oh, for sure. Like, especially like with how much wrestlers travel and they travel together, and how close they are are to each other. Like, it's not out of the question. Like, I remember there was rumors about, like, I forget who. Like, this is so long ago. Like when I was a kid reading this stuff, like about like Raven and another wrestler, and it just like
Hmm.
it's all these like different things, and the fact that like that stuff gets out there, and it was like such a big taboo in wrestling at that time. It would also show you the frustration that Benoit would carry after that. You know what I mean? Like he was ashamed of who he was and stuff like that, and then you know his best friend slash maybe something more, died doing. And Benoit must have known like he died doing what he loved. It was because of that thing that killed him. Wrestling killed him. And
Yeah,
I don't know, like it's so bizarre. It's a bizarre story just because like the people involved refuse to acknowledge that Chris Benoit might have actually like done it fully. You know what I mean? Like I love Jericho, but I feel like sometimes Jericho's like in denial about it. You know what I mean?
it's hard. It's hard to know since we didn't spend thousands of hours with Chris Benoit, you know. So it's hard.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they would say the
like
same thing to me if, or vice versa to you. Let's say I committed this act, and you were like, "That wasn't Knives. That's not the guy I know." They would say, "Jr. doesn't want to accept the truth," you know. So
I guess that's true.
yeah,
I guess that's true. But I don't know, uh, like I just feel like you got to be like a you got to be part crazy to do wrestling sometimes, and it's no surprise that wrestlers do like outrageous things sometimes. And I think about uh Jake the Snake's dad. I think about
very
different things
true.
I've heard about wrestling, and it's just like, ugh,
You
like
know, if you've ever watched I feel bad. Um, if you ever watched the Paige sex tape, she's having essentially a threesome with Xavier Woods and Brad Maddox, and
yeah,
so isn't there like I've never had a threesome with another man, but isn't that like a little gay? Like isn't that like a little gay? You can't tell me they're the only wrestlers that have ever swung that way before. You can't tell me. And so,
yeah,
but I'll tell you this: like, it never would have got out if if people didn't get it out. And
yeah.
so,
If the
it,
tape never leaked, no one would even know.
there's a lot of elements that are secrets that you take to the grave, like in wrestling, for sure. So it wouldn't surprise me if there was some, and I mean no disrespect on their names, like not that homosexuality is anything to be ashamed of, but there are Guerreros that are still out there alive. There are Benoits that are still out there alive, and so I feel bad. If in 10 years from now people dig up this podcast and they're like, Knives, how could you say that? That's just what the documentary subtext made me feel. And I thought of Brokeback Mountain. How could you not?
Yeah, no, especially after what Chavo said. Like that's kind of what kind of flipped it for me. Like because to me, like my mind always kind of goes to like that place where it's just like, oh, it sounded a little too close. But then like when Chavo said it was like a spouse, I was like, oh, wait a minute, something was applied there, and you know,
Yeah, yeah.
like I
Didn't they
said,
mention
not that
that
this,
Chris wrote a suicide note? Did they go into depth about that? I don't recall.
no, they didn't, and I've actually never seen or heard what that was said, but
Yeah,
they did like read his journal entries, like the one that was like chilling was like Eddie, I'll be with you soon again or something like that. Like it's just like oh, okay,
there it
you know,
is. There it is. Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
Um,
But man, what? Yeah, and this is like just a clip they showed in the documentary. But man, that chair shot that Chris Benoit took when he was diving out of the ring and Chris Jericho just whacked him. That was heavy.
I remember that. I remember that.
Yeah,
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 yeah, man. Yeah, it's so bad. I love wrestling. I remember when this tragedy happened and the CNN stuff, and I remember feeling at the time. I was like, this could end wrestling. How do you keep going after this? And the company changed its model after that. Don't get me wrong. Um, but it almost destroyed American. It almost destroyed WWE for sure. And I look back on it now. I can't. I very like I can't watch WWE right now. It's just so bad. Like the acting is bad. The storylines are terrible. It's very inconsistent. Like if you're watching Game of Thrones or something, you don't want to see a character be good, bad, be good, bad, be good, bad, inconsistent. Like you don't want to see that. And wrestling's very similar. There's a there's a through line, and WWE is so inconsistent. I can't keep track, and there's too much. It's oversaturation. But I do enjoy AEW because it's 2 hours a week, and for a year they've been telling like one story essentially, and so it's easy to follow. But I every now and then, man, like I miss the blood, I miss the violence, I miss um I mean, Mick Foley was one of my favorite guys as a kid. I miss
I know,
the
and I
reckless
feel like
abandon.
I feel like such a hypocrite because I thought about that too. Like my favorite match as a kid wasn't um the Iron Man match with Brett and Sean or like any of number of Sean's classics. Like my favorite match was the Royal Rumble 2000 Triple H versus Mick Foley match, and that match is brutal. You know,
Yeah. Oh yeah. That was like a three stages of hell or something, right?
I think it was just the I think that was the No Way Out match. The Rumble match was just the traditional hardcore match. It was Cactus versus Triple H.
Oh, yeah,
That's like one of my favorite
it was like a
ever.
street fight.
When it was
Yeah, I
like,
remember it very well.
yeah, yeah, and he was like, Triple H, I know you beating Mick Foley up, and I know you beating Mankind up, and I can't beat you, Triple H, but I know someone. And he takes off his shirt and it shows the cactus thing, and I was just in on it, and that was like that to me was like holy crap, that was the best match. But you know, like anytime I hear Mick Foley talk, and he says like he's kind of has trouble remembering things, and I'm like, oh man, what's the next 20 years gonna look like for that guy? Is he gonna even have 20 years? You know?
Gosh, I don't know. I don't know. He seems very he can speak very well. He's a very
Yeah,
intelligent speaker. He can write a book. So gosh, who knows? Who knows? He
yeah.
seems like a very bright, and he seems smarter than your average wrestler for sure. But it's scary, dude. Like Edge coming back. Why? Why? Why do you have to come back, man? I think he's like, I know he's in his 40s, but I think he's closer to 50, man.
Yeah, he's definitely in his 40s because he retired like 9 years ago.
He's
It was
46.
like,
46 years
yeah,
old. Still a
yeah.
young man for sure, but like to be throwing yourself on the ground. You've had two neck surgeries. Um,
You finish it as the spear, man. Like one wrong move, you're banging your head on something, you know.
Definitely. I
But
remember when he came out in the Rumble. I was glad that I was watching the Rumble because I had not seen a pay per view since it had been like 10 months, or any show for WWE. And so I watched it. I was shocked. I didn't believe it. I thought we were being punked when Edge came out. I didn't believe any of
same.
the rumors. But I remember thinking like, this is impossible. That's all I said to myself. This is impossible. I'm surprised. I'm surprised he's. I know they filmed it already between him and Orton. Like, hopefully it's more dramatic than it is uh, punching and kicking and biting and tables and come on, Edge. Don't go through a table. Don't touch a ladder ever again in your life.
Yeah, you took that. You did that one spear off the ladder to who was it,
Jeff.
Matt Hardy?
Jeff, yeah.
You don't got to do anything again. But I guess to transition a little bit to wrestling, not the tragedy of Benoit. But um, are you excited for this year's WrestleMania?
No.
Okay, are you gonna watch this year's WrestleMania?
We'll see how the first night goes. I don't care. I feel so bad. I've been
Yeah,
saying that a lot, like about the Snyder Cut and a lot of things. Like, I don't care. I'm also not invested in, like, for example, AJ Taker. I don't care. I'm not invested in Goldberg, whatever he's gonna wrestle Braun Strowman. I'm not invested. Uh, I'm not invested in Seth Rollins, Kevin Owens. I'm not invested in. I like Daniel Bryan. He's one of the best. I'm not invested in him and Sami Zayn. I'm not
even though
invested.
the yeah, even though they're the two best workers, I agree. Like, who cares?
It could be the match of the night. I'm not invested. I Shayna and Becky could be cool. Like it's a proper sort of like feud. In a traditional sense, I'm very old school. On that note, I think we've talked about this. The wrestler who doesn't get the credit he deserves and who basically created the blood feud, in my opinion, is Triple H. And his feuds with Shawn Michaels, his feuds with The Undertaker, his feuds with Cactus Jack, his feuds with Chris Benoit, were bloody, personal, 49-minute promo fused like stories, even with Randy Orton and stuff. And so I feel like now that he's gone, we don't see those feuds. And I got spoiled as a kid because I kind of expect that. Randy and Edge are sort of doing that. Shayna and Becky are sort of doing that, but not really. And AEW does do that. Everything Cody has done has a sort of blood feud element to it. It's in his blood. But that's what I like about wrestling the most. That's my favorite thing is this one-on-one grudge match, personal. It gets deeper and deeper, like the Shawn Jericho stuff. Like, I like that the most, man. And we don't have that anymore. And so going into WrestleMania, I feel like, the Olympics every 4 years makes sense. WrestleMania every year, like, it's contrived to me. It's like they have to do it because it's April, and it's like, is that a good reason to do it just because it's April? Like, there wasn't a proper build. And also with this epidemic, like, all signs are pointing to don't do it. And I've been watching very closely the WWE stock. It hasn't been this low in a very long time, years. And if this optically is a shit show, I don't know how they recover from this, to be honest. I know that's hyperbolic, but I'm so not invested in this shit at all.
Yeah,
Wrestling
no,
is not
same
meant
here.
to be performed in a vacuum. Like, you're breaking the law of wrestling and having this with no crowd. It makes no fucking sense.
Yeah, like seeing Steve Austin kind of do like "Give me a hell yeah" with no crowd. I'm like, what's the point? Why did you fly him out there?
This carny show must go on element to it, which I respect, like, on principle, but the optics are terrible. Like, this could if this is just like in bad taste, you could hurt the company. You could hurt all these wrestlers' careers, and you could expose the business in a way that could be worse than a Beyond the Mat or something. And so it's just disgusting. And I appreciate what AEW is doing because it's sort of like a stalling. It almost feels like an intermission because they'll come back and their fans will be rabid. But they're not. Like, WrestleMania is impossible in a performance center. It's impossible. Why call it
Yeah,
WrestleMania? You could have called it,
Super
um,
Show Sunday.
yeah,
Yeah.
some shit like that. You could have called it, COVID Smasher, blah blah blah, and lean into it. But it's just so tone deaf, and I feel so bad for those wrestlers. I saw a list of all the wrestlers who were like, not gonna do it, not gonna do it, and I
Well,
appreciated them.
like so you had said something interesting to me, which was that this is over text, and maybe I misread the text, but I said I'm glad Roman Reigns pulled out, and
Right.
you said, if I remember correctly,
Hmm.
I don't think it was his choice,
Yeah.
and I don't. And I think he pulled in his own accord, but what did you mean by that? You think like WWE officials really told him not to wrestle?
No, I thought that um, he wasn't legally capable. Like, I thought there was some sort of interference or intervention from the law of whatever. Like, dude, if you're immunocompromised, you can't. I'm sure that if there wasn't like a law for that, Roman would have did it. I don't know if he did it on his own accord. I think the public optics is that he did. And so if he said he did, then he did. I'm going to take his word for it. But I didn't get the news that way. So from what I'm seeing on Twitter is that, yeah, he pulled out on his own accord. And if he did, good on him. That was probably a devastating, like, a devastating decision to make because you're Vince's guy. You're the leader of this locker room. You're the biggest face in the company right now. And so that must have been hard, especially because storyline wise, they brought Bill Goldberg in, for this reason.
Spear versus spear
Yeah,
versus spear.
yeah. Oh God. But either way, so that's what I thought. But maybe you were right, and you got proper news. It sounds like that's what they're going with.
Okay. Well, I guess I just because like to me, like I'm not sure if there was any legal reason why he couldn't wrestle. I just think that he knows, hey, dude, survived cancer twice. I must not have like the best immune system. WWE is not really testing any of us. I'm not going to do it. But maybe he didn't think in that way, and someone really did just come in and say, "Hey, let's not do it." And that's totally possible because Vince may be insane, but if like Triple H or like Steph or Shane or Kevin Dunn or whoever went into his ear and said, "Hey, Vince, this guy could die if he gets sick," I can see Vince pulling the plug. But I thought it was Roman that pulled the plug himself. But who knows?
I don't know. You're probably right. I want you to be right. Gosh, I don't know. I don't know, but it's the right choice, man. What happens if one wrestler who wrestles on the show gets coronavirus and dies? Um,
Oh, see,
who,
well,
who
that's a
who's
whole different thing.
responsible?
But I would imagine WWE. I think about that with the UFC. Like the UFC hasn't been able to put on a show, but they want to. And I was thinking, like, man, if someone's cornerman gets it, if some buddy in the commission gets it, if a fighter gets it, and they die, like your ass is on the hook. Like, how can it not be? Like, supposedly the Miz had it, right? Which is why he's not wrestling,
Hmm.
and that's why some wrestlers got pissed because they were like, why did the Miz still try to wrestle when he was feeling sick? Like it's stuff like that where I'm like, oh my goodness,
Yeah,
like they're playing with fire. Like fighters and wrestlers aren't going to say, I'm feeling a little under the weather.
like wrestling of all sports, you know, um, should have been the first one to pull out.
Yeah, it really should.
There's sweat, there's tears, there's blood. It's disgusting. Like it's a disgusting like the mat. It's just gross, man. They use a new mat every single fucking time they wrestle, like for a reason. People get staph, just normally for just wrestling, and not showering immediately after, and so I just don't think. I don't know if it was a money thing or what. I mean, it's just Vince McMahon's stubbornness, right? Like, who doesn't want this to happen? I'd imagine it's so strange and disgusting. And I will say that like 2 4-hour shows, like, why would I want to watch that? I don't want to watch that. I don't know
Well,
if it's like if I'm getting older or if I'm getting like more uncool or all the above, but like I'm increasingly don't give a fuck about um like I can't watch everything. It has to be
yeah,
special. It has to be really good for me to give
yeah.
it my attention, man.
And I think about that because last year WrestleMania was in New York, and it wasn't really in New York, but it was kind of New York, and I could have gone, and I was like, I don't really want to go. You know what I mean? And that seemed like impossible a few years ago. I would have gone, but
I know.
I don't know. It's just like for me, it's like wrestling is just like all the WrestleManias. Like when was the last time like a main event felt like a big deal in the audience? Like I was watching WrestleMania 30, right? And this is the one everyone points back to.
Hmm.
But like the crowd for that moment was so hot. Like when Triple H comes out and pulls them out, the fans are fucking like livid. When it looks like um, Randy Orton's about to pin Batista, or Batista's about to pin Randy Orton. Like there's a great moment towards the end of the match, and Batista bombs Orton. Bryan's out of the ring, and you can just see the crowd going, "Holy shit, they're not going to give it to Bryan."
Right.
And then fucking Randy Orton kicks out a 2.9999, and it's like everyone is like super hyped for that.
Yeah.
And it's like moments like that don't really like happen every year, unfortunately, and they never have been every year. But like I was just watching that, and I was like, man, like when's the last time a WrestleMania main event felt that big? You know?
Yeah, I would say 30, and I would say before that, 20. Quite honestly. Yeah.
Yeah, because like, and this is like, yeah, because like, what's been like the most recent main events? It's like been a bunch of Roman Reigns and Lesnar matches, and one of those matches was really good, but just no one really wanted it. And then there was the Becky and Charlotte match, or no, Becky and Ronda and Charlotte match, and that one was good, but I felt like the feud kind of had lost steam. Like it peaked in November, but they held on to it. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And then and they almost did that with the Bryan feud too. Like I felt like I just Bryan was so over it didn't matter. But like I felt like he was peaking like in January. You know what I mean? But they just kind of kept him on ice until April. Um, but
Well,
yeah, I mean,
I think before Punk left, I don't think Brian was in the cards to. He wasn't going to be in the main event. I think at the time they were toying with Brian and Sheamus again, completely disregarding the audience. But when Punk left, I think they knew that no, No, we need. I think the audience knew. Like, no, we need to have our main event. Fuck this, and obviously Triple H is like, well, I got to get in on this, for sure, like he always does.
Yeah, no, but that was such a like that to me, and this was after I'd stopped watching wrestling, but for me, like just being an old school Ring of Honor guy, like seeing Daniel Bryan like finally win the title and seeing him like tap out Dave Batista, I was like, man, that's that's the end of the wrestling I guess I wanted, and I kind of stopped after that. But no, it's
The
just
last time we saw wrestling together, Roman defeated Taker at the main event.
mhm.
Remember that? I almost forgot. And that should have, could have been the last time we ever saw The Undertaker. And it felt like wrestling ended, storyline wise,
Yeah,
there. It was like this long canon. And, but now it just kept going. It just kept going. And so it's just been bleeding ever since. So do you
can I
care
ask
about
you?
WrestleMania? Are you going to watch it? Are you invested? I mean, it's 2 nights. How else are you going to spend your time? It's going to
Yeah,
be next Saturday and Sunday.
yeah, I probably will watch it just because, like you said, like what the hell else am I gonna do? Like maybe I'll watch like Cameron Crowe movie or something, but but who knows? But So speaking of should have been the last match, Shawn Michaels had an extra match after Undertaker, right? He had that weird tag team match,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and it was a bad match. But something when that match happened, I felt a little kind of ticked off. I don't know if you felt the same way because I was thinking, wait, if Shawn always could have wrestled, why didn't he wrestle Punk? Why didn't he wrestle Danny Bryan? Why didn't he wrestle AJ Styles, Samoa Joe, whoever? Did you get that same feeling or not really?
No, just because I heard Sean has always been pretty consistent in that, out of respect of the Undertaker, he would never come back. He came back to what he referred to Saudi as a glorified house show, so he doesn't consider it canon, even though it
Oh,
was
okay.
televised and everything. And he did it with Taker, and so he was like, I'm only gonna do it against this guy. So I don't think I've seen like a table for three, I want to say, with AJ and Sean. And AJ's like, I walked up to Sean and I told him, here's what we could do. Sean's just like, nah, nah. Like I'm not gonna come out of retirement for any dream match. So I think no matter what the angle was or what the money was or the spot, whether if it was Punk, Daniel, AJ, Seth, like Joe, it wasn't gonna happen because of the contingency with the Undertaker. I think he's kind of like bonded to him in that way. Maybe they're gay lovers. I don't know, but that's what he said consistently throughout this time, and so I actually couldn't watch that match. I couldn't watch
Yeah, I
it.
never watched it either.
Yeah,
I never watched it either.
I couldn't
I was
watch
just
it
wondering if
for just because I know it's so petty, but I couldn't see bald Shawn Michaels wrestle in Saudi Arabia. I could not. I could not.
oh man.
Yeah, man.
So
As we're winding down here, just with the Vice Lynn documentary, I wasn't sure if there was anything else that we left off the table. I didn't expect us to. I didn't come into that, with the Brokeback angle. But now that you mentioned it, or not that you mentioned it, but now that I had thought about it, I remember feeling that way. I've seen part one twice, and I've seen part two once, and I thought about that way each time I saw the installments, and the documentary alludes to that, in my opinion. But is there anything else? Like what did you think about David Benoit and Chavo basically being there, the last wrestler that both Eddie and Chris talked to? Like, what did you?
well,
Yeah,
not the last wrestler. I think Chavo's the last person to talk to both of them,
yeah,
which is insane. Because he said goodbye to Eddie as soon as he went to that room, and maybe Eddie had called someone. Who knows? That's I've never heard that.
yeah,
So I assumed that he just went to sleep and then he woke up and died. And then with Chris, Chris's last phone call was to Chavo,
right.
and I think man like that's
It's
you
heavy.
talk to you're the last person to talk to Eddie before he had his heart attack, and then you're the last person to talk to Chris. But not only did he talk to Chris, he talked to Chris after he killed his family. Like that's got to weigh pretty heavily on Chavo, and I think that's why
For sure.
Chavo has been so giving to David, right? David Benoit, because I don't know if he like feels bad or what, like who knows, right? But I think there's this like weird thing that like Chavo has to carry this like insane amount of weight on his shoulders that only a couple of people can understand, like David and Nancy's sister and stuff like that.
I think I think Chavo and Jericho were probably friends of the family and were there when David was like a baby and stuff like that. So it's great that they were probably always in his life, and I'm sure guilt and the onus and the burden, it plays a factor. But I think it's like secondary or at the bottom. I think they, how could you not, like, it would be. I mean, sadly, there's no one in my life that's like super close to my kids. I can't think of somebody. Um, but it would be like that. Like, how could someone who grew up with my children not still be in their lives if, like, you know, went berserk or
The,
something? But
yeah. No, no, and I hear you. I like, especially.
I'm sure it is guilt, but I'm sure he was always a friend of the family. That's what it felt like.
Yeah, yeah, you're probably right. I guess I was just thinking about it just because, like, I don't know, like I've always felt like Chris Benoit was a little like like he didn't have that many friends, but he
You,
always had Eddie, and then
one
maybe.
thing, I don't like reading comments on YouTube, but with this documentary, I had to. Um, and one comment I saw was, "How come Rey Mysterio wasn't interviewed?" And what do you think about that?
Oh wait, no, sorry, I'm gonna unpack like a whole different thing.
Okay.
Uh, so I get back to that to what I'm about to say, but
Hmm.
when you were younger, did you ever feel like the tribute shows were a little exploitative or no? Like the Eddie and Owen Hart one?
I didn't.
See, I did. Like that's just me, right? And I definitely thought it was exploitative
How do you
when
mean?
after Eddie died. After Eddie died, Rey Mysterio was using that like as part of his gimmick. And I know that wasn't Rey. I know that was the writers, but I always thought that was a little weird. And when Chris Benoit died, I wonder if Vince wasn't seeing clearly because he was just thinking, "Oh, great, I can do another tribute show. I can do, yada yada yada." And he wasn't seeing what was right in front of him, which is what Chris Benoit did. You get what I mean?
Yeah, but the Chris Benoit bit, I don't think for the Eddie thing, I know what you mean. Like Rey Mysterio main events WrestleMania and wins the title, and it's all for Eddie. Um, how much of that is contrived? How much of that is genuinely organic? You know,
Yeah,
I would hope that I would. I mean, gosh, I don't know. I don't know. That's a hard one. I never felt that way. I never felt that way. It did feel like if that tragedy never happened, maybe Ray would have never won the big one. Sure, right? But how could he not? How could he not? I don't know.
yeah.
It's a
So
strange
I
one.
guess like as far as like as far as like why is Ray not in the documentary? I would just imagine it's probably two things, but one is that
Being on a WWE contract has to be one of them.
yeah, yeah, that's the major one. And the second thing is I don't know if Ray and Benoit were that close. Like if they did it one on Eddie and Ray's that interview, that's a little weird. But I feel
Hmm.
Ray and Benoit probably were never that close, is my guess.
I mean, but Chavo and Vicky were interviewed, so Malenko,
That's true.
it's kind of like a given, right? Like that Ray would have some input. Um, makes you think, man. It makes you really think. Gosh, I don't know. And I guess it's the WWE thing had to have been like, look, you can't, you're not going to, for sure. I'm sure they put their, they drew a line in the sand, but it would have been interesting to have his perspective. I almost thought Punk
Yeah.
was going to come out for the sole fact that he was supposed to wrestle Chris in his match.
Oh yeah, I was thinking about that too. Like in some ways, Punk is really lucky that Benoit decided to kill himself instead of wrestle that last match. Like, can you imagine how Punk would feel if that like he wrestled someone that literally just got done killing his wife and kid?
Oh my god, yeah. Well, we're all
Because he
lucky.
wanted, yeah, he wanted to wrestle. That's what I heard and read, and the documentary kind of said as much because he was telling Chavo, "Hey, my kid and wife are sick. I'm taking care of them, but I'm gonna go there Sunday," and then he didn't kill himself until Sunday morning. So I think he probably was gonna wait until after the match because that's just the weirdo he was and is.
Maybe. That could have
I
been
mean, again, that's just
that could have been the
that's
CTE, and we don't know.
yeah, true,
Oh
true.
man,
But
I'm reading some of these comments on the documentary. I saw it on Vice, but the YouTube one's pretty cool. Um, it's just so sad. All this shit is so sad. I'm sorry, but I haven't seen anybody mention the Brokeback theory. I know it sounds like I'm kind of trolling, and I'm not. It's just a
no,
hard thing.
no,
It's a hard thing to say out
it's
loud because it's so
no,
out
no,
there.
it's true. Like because you saying it made me feel comfortable, kind of saying it because it's what I thought too. But I would never like openly say it to someone. Like, hey, did you think they were like? Because also the underlining thing of us saying it is it makes us seem like we're kind of homophobic. You know what I mean? But
Oh
like
no, no, no,
that's not
no,
no, no, exactly.
no, not
But I
at
think
all.
yeah, and that's like the issue is like, but I thought the same thing. Like, why was Chris so broken up about it? You know, like, and like, obviously, if you lose your best friend, it hurts. But going into your best friend's spouse's place and crying next to his pillow and just kind of being a wreck, like, I don't know. And then, like I said, Chavo had said that thing, which is kind of what really flipped it. It was like he was crying like for the spouse, like. That's what I thought. That's what I thought. But like, no one's. I don't think no one's gonna mention it because it's kind of disrespectful and it's also kind of maybe a little homophobic.
It's possible, yeah, and it's disrespectful. Like I kind of feel like people like in the community can't mention it. Like Chavo
Hmm.
can't mention it because it disrespects the Guerrero family name,
Yeah.
and no one on Benoit's family can mention it because they're dead. But also, there's no one out there who could say, um, I just think it's to me. Say it's true, the Brokeback theory. Say it's true that they had an unrequited forbidden love. Say it's true. There's the missing piece, and there's why. There's why because when Eddie died, Chris died, and isn't that enough? Isn't that enough?
Yeah. And not only that, but he must have been like kind of resentful to his wife at that time. You know what I mean? Like the person that he really loved is gone, and then Nancy and him are having trouble. And like the something the documentary didn't go into, or maybe it did, I forget now, was like Benoit had a restraining order or had a restraining order put on him. You know what I mean? Like and things like that. Like
Mm.
they were in a rough time towards the end, from what I heard. And the documentary said as much. Like they weren't really talking. Like Nancy staying with Vicky for a month. Like and Vicky didn't even mention why that is weird. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh man, sorry. I'm like so speechless. I'm being a bad podcaster right now, but
Yeah, no,
it
no,
just makes me it just makes me think.
yeah, no, and that's the kind of the powerful thing about this story. Like even all these years later, like we're both so speechless. And I don't know, were you a Kristen Wiig guy growing up or no?
Oh yeah, for sure. I remember one of my favorite feuds was Benoit and Lesnar actually, and it was the first time Lesnar ever did this submission called the Brock Lock, and he never did it again. Where it was like a half Boston, but the leg was behind his neck, and he kind of sat on your back. And Lesnar and Benoit had a great submission match, and the knife edge chops, and then also this is like kind of corny because you can't listen to it now, but like Chris Benoit's music, the Our Lady Peace version was dope. The cage match with him and Angle and the tribute match with Brett and Benoit was like the only WCW match I ever watched for Owen. And I remember WrestleMania, the Rumble going into WrestleMania 20, where Benoit wins the Rumble.
Oh, that was the best Rumble
He was
match
my
too.
guy that I was going for,
Yeah,
and at the time it was like is he going to choose the SmackDown champion or the Raw champion, whatever? And we all knew like the real one, he had to beat Triple H. That was the real one,
yeah,
like and God damn it, like yeah, he was one of my guys. He was the like the bar, like the true wrestling, the true wrestler, tough guy. He was the shooter, like you know what I mean. He was the no one was gonna make Chris Benoit tap. Like he was like an unbeatable legend, like when he was wrestling.
yeah.
Um,
And the thing that it's kind of like the secondary, or maybe even the third thing that kind of sucks about what happened with all that is like so many wrestlers kind of owe their career to him. Like I think of Kurt Angle, like what legitimized him was his feuds with Chris, you know?
Certainly.
And and I think about like all the great matches that are just now lost to history because no one wants to acknowledge them, you know?
Yeah. I know.
And
There's so many matches. Like there, I think there was like a TLC match, like TLC 4 or 2 or something. Back when you would number them. Now there's been too many. That happened on a SmackDown, and I think Jericho and Benoit won that one.
mhm.
And it was just like all these matches that are just gonna be forgotten. And
Oh man, and now it's just hitting me, but like one of my all-time favorite matches was a tag team match. It was him and Angle versus Edge and Mysterio versus I think it was Los Guerreros. It was No
yeah,
Mercy. Man, that match really blew the the roof
yeah,
off of uh, off of that building. No, just like I feel bad because like I I I can't watch those matches, but those were the matches for me. You know, like all those SmackDown matches. Like I
yeah,
haven't thought about that Lesnar feud in like literally in years, but when you mentioned that ending, I remember that spot. You know, like no one brought
yeah.
like that realism, that intensity to their matches quite like Benoit did.
Mm-hmm. For sure. And also, his finisher, crippler crossface, man, was like the most legit finisher. I remember my buddy Serge that I'd wrestle with. That was his finisher, and if he had me in it, I tapped in it so many times. Like I respected the finisher. Um, WrestleMania 20 was my favorite WrestleMania main event for years, um, and I think um, the triple threat. I love triple threats, and fatal four ways are like my favorite gimmick. Um, but the triple threat with Batista, Orton, and Daniel was like finally a new main event that mattered when the right champion won. The celebration was there. The stars aligned. Like it takes 10 years to build that organically. And like the audience has to choose it, and they have to listen, and they have to tease us, and it's just like such a beautiful dance. And I think it was 10 years between Daniel and uh, and Benoit that we had that. And man, that was my favorite main event for a long time. And I don't go back and watch Benoit matches. I can't. It's impossible.
Mhm.
Who is this guy FaceTiming me? I don't know who that is. I feel bad. Such a cool name though. Anyways, man. Any last words? Like how do you want to wrap this fucker up? Anything else you want to get into? I'm just like now depressed, but
Yeah, no, me too. Like it's
reading
such a
these comments, and I can't find one person that that is mentioning this theory. I see a lot of like, wow, we all knew that Chris and Eddie were close, but we didn't know they were that close. I read a lot of that Chris and Eddie were soulmates. I think there's something to that, but no one has said potentially that they were lovers.
yeah. Uh no, I mean no, I feel so bad because I usually I'm in such a good mood after talking to you, but yeah, it's
Yeah,
just kind of
no,
like
it's good.
I feel so down.
It's not you.
But yeah, no, it's the subject matter. But I guess what can be the last quick nice thing we can talk about before going? No, I don't know. I
I'll
mean,
say
like the
this.
thing that
This is random as fuck. I had wrote a movie, and I had money to make it, and I even allocated in the budget. I was gonna show it at the Border Theater just because I know I can sell 200 to 300 tickets there, and was talking to actors, was looking at Airbnbs to like find a location to film it, and then this happened with the coronavirus, and so it
Mhm.
put into perspective. Oh, this is just bad timing to make a movie. And also, how could I ask someone to pay $5 to watch a movie, especially when there's HBO Go and Netflix and Disney Plus, and you pay what $10 for Disney, and you get all the Star Wars and Marvel movies, and it's just like all the Simpsons episodes. Like, how can you compete with that? And I put out there on Facebook, hey, if I made a movie during this quarantine time, and I put it out there for you to purchase between $1 to $10, how much would you pay to watch this movie? Some people were really cool and they were like $10 And I was just like, I don't think you would. I just realized I'm saying this on a podcast now. I just forget that I'm not just talking to you. But and some people, filmmakers, said $1. Filmmakers said $1, and I
Yeah.
wanted to tell them, why the fuck do you expect that anybody would ever pay for more than $1 for your shit if that's what you're willing to pay? And
Yeah, for sure.
it's hard for
It,
me to really love filmmaking right now during this. It's really hard, man, because it requires people. It's self indulgent. It's just entertainment, essentially. And I want to, I mean, shit, if I had three buddies down here and we were making stuff, I think we would make stuff. But it's so hard, like by yourself, to find the will to make it important because it's not.
yeah.
How do
No,
you wrestle with creativity right now?
no, like so this is like so like it feels like forever ago, but I was getting really into making TikToks, right? And I was
Oh
having
yeah,
fun with them.
yeah.
And I just kind of stopped. And I think this whole pandemic thing kind of zapped a little bit of my creativity. Like I've heard so many people say like, "Oh, this is the time to write. This is the time to do all this stuff."
Mm-hmm.
But for me, I just like I I don't feel that. You know what I mean? And
Yep.
but to piggyback off of what you said about filmmakers not wanting to support filmmakers or whatever,
Yeah.
I think about that because so I'm not sure if you're aware, but there's a popular film magazine here in New York, and it's kind of worldwide. It's called Film Comment, and it just recently shut down. And
Oh
a lot
no.
of my film critic friends were like, "Oh, that's such a blow," and a lot of people got laid off, and it sucked. But I wanted to like tell them like, "Man, when's the last time you guys have ever bought like that magazine? When's the last time?" And I know what their answer would be. They'd be like, "Oh, I haven't in years." It's like, of course these things go out of business. No one supports it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like no one thinks film
There's
criticism or film
there's that,
reviews are worth.
but also let's be real. Tech companies have killed it,
Oh yeah,
right?
for sure. I mean, that's like the real thing.
Like Twitter took
Yeah.
that place. Netflix took the place of like indie films. Like there is no. I feel so bad. Like name an actor you like, but that has never won an Academy Award.
Shia LaBeouf.
Okay, perfect example. So Shia LaBeouf makes a movie, and
Hmm.
he does his best. He directs a movie, writes it, produces it. It's probably not going to make its money back. It's probably not going to matter.
Yeah.
That sucks. And guess what? You and me, we ain't Shia LaBeouf. Who's going to care
That's
about
true.
our movie?
Hmm. No, I
That
mean,
sucks.
and not just that, man. But I rewatched Jerry Maguire yesterday, and there's so many scenes in that movie that are like kind of iconic. Like I'm not sure if you're a fan of that movie, but
Yeah, I
you
like
know
it.
what I mean, right?
Yeah, no, I like. I just recently watched Almost Famous in Vanilla Sky.
Yeah. And I was thinking like, man, movies like this don't really get iconic status anymore. Like you know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
when's the next big romantic comedy going to come out, or even or just romantic film going to come out where people are going to be like able to quote uh "You had me at hello," or like, you know what I mean? There's
Yeah.
so many classic scenes in that movie,
Hmm.
but no one can remember a scene from any movie nowadays because there's so many things now. Like I
Right.
love Phantom Thread.
Yeah.
And there's some things that I consider kind of classic in that movie,
Yeah.
but it's classic to me and like two other people. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Where when like movies like Jerry Maguire came out, it was like this was this was culture, and now
I
films are
know.
no longer like culture,
Yeah.
and it's been that way for a while. But I guess it just like hit me yesterday when I was watching Jerry Maguire how that is.
Yeah. It's funny. With my job, last year September through November, I was on the road every week. I was in Denver, places I'd never been, Seattle, North Carolina. I was in, gosh, I want to say like Arizona at one point, and all these places. It was cool. California, and I'm on the road. It's cool. I felt like, okay, this is my job. And then I went to Hawaii. I went to DC for a week each, and then I stopped traveling because that's just the way it goes in the company I work for and the nonprofit space. And so I knew. I mean, I didn't really know that I wasn't going to be on the road for a few months. And so I got work to do, and I'm editing and organizing and managing and all this stuff, and it's cool. I'm working, getting paid. And I didn't travel again until March, like the first week of March. I went to Florida, and before that, like when I went to Hawaii, it was hard to have a good time because I knew like I wasn't with my family, so I wasn't gonna be posting like me drinking margaritas by the beach. Not that I'm that person, but it was kind of hard to have a good time. But when I went to
Yeah.
Florida after being cooped up in the house for a few months, working from home, I didn't give a fuck about my family. Like I had a good time, like I didn't feel guilty is what I meant. And I was gone. I was away from them just for a couple of days. And when I came back, I was like, "Woo! Let's get back on the road." I was gonna travel. I was gonna go to Florida again the next week. I was gonna go to Chicago the week after that, and I was gonna go to Europe and go to Germany and London in the summer. And this happened. South by got canceled the day after I came back, and
Yeah.
now I'm stuck in the house again. And I for a while, like during the first week of quarantine, I was having these apocalyptic dreams, and I remember I haven't told anybody this, but I had a scare where I woke up with the biggest fucking migraine and a fever,
Mm.
and I was like, "Fuck!" And I'm like in bed, and I'm googling like symptoms for the coronavirus, and I didn't have I have asthma, but I didn't have respiratory issues, and so I was like, "Fuck." I took a lot of ibuprofen, chugged a lot of water, and I slept for 24 hours. I lost the day, slept for a whole day. Woke up and I was fine. I was like, thank
Yeah.
God. But I got scared, man. I was like, oh, fuck. Like, if this happens, I'm going to die. Like, I literally had that fear. But I had this fever dream, like an actual fever dream. And it was there was a thunderstorm outside in real life, you know? I sleep right
Yeah.
next to a window. There was a thunderstorm. And I think that had something to do with the fever dream as well. And I had a dream that I caused the coronavirus. I had a dream that it was my fault. And everybody that was quarantined now had to feel the depression that I had felt these past couple of months being stuck at home. And I was like, haha, now you have to feel what I feel. Because there's so many extroverts out there like me who do not like this. It's hard. And so I've been like, it's been a big mind fuck, like all these feelings, like I want to go out, I want to work, and I want to go out and I want to explore. And I'm so grateful that my company has like a virtual system built in. Like we work remotely and mobily, and so now we're translating what we did out in the field online, and it's great. Like that's so cool. They're kind of futurists in that way, and they're really like leading the charge there. And I'm grateful. I'm one of the lucky ones. Like I got my job still. What you were saying earlier at the top of the show about you don't feel safe going to work, like that makes me so sad. And so many people in the service industry are fucked right now, and it's terrible. And I'm one of the lucky ones. And having said all that, to make a movie and then charge people for it right now, like how could I do that? I can't. I can't compete. Like, and not in a self-defeatist way, but just like the stories that I have to tell. In 2004 would have been really cool when you had filmmaking was the only game in town, and it's not. And so I've been really sad, too sad to make TikToks. That's sad. I've been too sad to even make podcasts. Like doing the one that I did last week with Clara was fun. Doing with Christian and Jeremy, which by the way, Christian wasn't booked. He just wanted to jump in, and he did, and it was cool. And then doing this one with you is great. Like we're making art right now. Like I love it. But boy, man, anytime, and I'm happy I get to tell you this, and this isn't in a bad way. I want you to know that like this isn't bitter. This is um, just looking at the other side of the fence, and like the grass looks greener. Like when I see you post pictures of you and your friends, I'm like, man, I'd give anything for that. I'd give anything to have 2, 3 buddies that I can make art with. Like that's what this has taught me, and I've known this for a while. Like I would give anything for just a couple of friends to go make some cool stuff with. And back in my day when I would make backyard wrestling videos, that's why we did it. That's why we did it, was to hang out, and so I could have something to edit, and I would cut music to it. And I was editing on Windows Movie Maker at the time with a 3 megapixel camera, um, and I think it was like 128 megabyte SD card. Um, and that's what I lived for, man. After these chair shots and concussions, but going back to my house and rewatching the footage with my homies, like that's what I lived for sure. And I miss that, and I'd give anything for that. And being stuck in a house right now is so hard. And I know it's temporary, but even when we go back to normal, um, that movie that I wanted to make that I was so pumped for just a week before this, I just kind of feel like a fraud or something. Like it's just not important. It's just not important, you know? For God's sakes, Childish Gambino released an album that nobody cared about. You know,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
weird.
not
And I'll stop
yeah,
talking.
not like, yeah. The Weeknd released an album. I've been thinking about that too. Like just like I don't know how people. I don't know. Like it's just like I know the world's still spinning and things are still getting released. And I watched that Vin Diesel movie that came out. Right, what I don't know what
Yeah.
it's called, but you know what I'm talking about.
Bright
Bloodline or
Spot,
Bloodsport,
Bloodline.
right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it was just like, okay, and it's just like I've kind of lost kind of like the ability to like enjoy things a certain way. Like I have to like watch like comfort films. Like I watch Can't Hardly Wait, and that one got me a little happy.
That's a good
But
one.
if I'm like trying to watch something like that I'm not used to, I just feel uncomfortable. It's somewhat.
It's hard. I feel the same way. I watch Inherent Vice. Like, how many times can I see this movie? And like you said, when you mentioned Phantom Pain, that's me with Inherent Vice. I don't have anybody like that I can talk to inside jokes with, like the way The Big Lebowski is like just kind of in the lexicon. I can't do that with Inherent Vice, and it's like one of my favorite movies ever. And it kind of just like it's like it didn't happen, you know. And that makes me really sad because I'll never make something as good as that with
I
Joaquin
know.
Phoenix and Reese Witherspoon and Benicio del Toro and all these legends. Like, so
Owen
it's
Wilson, yes.
Owen Wilson and what's his name, Thanos and all these fucking guys. Like, I just can't. It's hard, man. And so I'm trying to find. And I don't know why it's so difficult to find this like pocket. And the podcast is that. It's that, but I want like more. Of just being creative and being and having fun and like TikToks was that for a while and I'm gonna get back into that. Like it was really fun, but it's hard when I'm just fucking cooped up, you know, and it's hard to like there's so many condescending artists that are talking about the coronavirus right now and being like and kind of like making like content about it in a way that to me is exploitative and also phony. And I'm like, don't do this, don't do that. You know what I mean? Like, I've just been kind of quiet about the whole thing, and I don't know what to do with all this energy, man. Like, I don't know. And so when I see that you and your buddies are making a movie and all that, like, I can't wait to support it. And I think it's cool, and hopefully hopefully it does come out. I'm sure you guys maybe have more to film or something, but there's
Oh
God,
wait, speaking of which, I guess we can end on this note. But I had saw the so as you know, we've been filming Fernie and Luca for a while now, right?
yeah.
And by design, we're supposed to shoot it in seasons, and
Mm-hmm.
we have like about three fourths of it shot. So Andrew showed us a rough cut, and it was really good. And I was like bummed out because I know we probably won't be able to shoot the last part for a few months. And I got kind of sore about it because I was thinking like, man, I knew we should have shot in early March or, or late February, but it just wasn't in the cards, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But it sucks because that movie is so good, but it probably will get delayed, by at least a few months.
For sure. What is the like the rollout strategy for Andrew?
For that
Like,
one.
yeah,
Uh, so we've had internal discussions. For me, I just said release it online. Because our friend, and I won't mention names, but he's going to be releasing something tomorrow, and I'm excited to see how that does.
really.
But
Where's he releasing
yeah,
it? Where can I find it?
well, I tweet it out, of course, when it comes out. It's he's knowing him, it's probably going to be Vimeo or YouTube, but we'll see. Maybe he has different plans, but so I had to do something similar with Fernie and Luca, but then the actors all want the festival. Andrew, of course, has some connections, so they want to premiere the movie, and so it's just like this whole thing. Like Graham had just premiered Shoot the Moon on No Budge, right? And it did really well. It got like 5,000 views. It was pretty amazing.
That's cool.
but uh, but yeah, I mean, I don't know what's the proper way to do a rollout in 2020, especially with all this going on, because who even wants to go to a festival this year? You know?
Yeah, I will say like here was my plan for I wrote a movie, and finally a character that I loved, and it just came together. and it had been percolating for a few years, and so when I dumped it all out and wrote it, um, it was kind of fully formed. And my idea was, um, I was going to make I wanted to sell at least 200 tickets, $5 a piece, at the Border Theater. My idea was do a pre-sale, um, 2 weeks before the Mission premiere, and I was going to film a documentary behind the scenes of me making this movie. And I was going to take my documentary crew to the Border Theater, and the way the documentary would end would be the premiere, right? We'll do the Q&A and all that. And so cool. I was going to be making two movies for the price of one, and have the premiere, which is also like a test audience. Cool. The movie makes its money back. I had a budget of $2,500, and I could make that money back at the Border Theater. I've done it before, and I was going to do it again and sell it really, really hard. Use the footage of the documentary, the podcast that I was going to film with the cast and crew, the behind the scenes footage, use the movie, whatever, to push it hard one more time. And I'll have like buddies that are critics like you, my friend Robert Longoria, Dave, write some blurbs about the thing. Cool. And then push for a Twitch premiere and live stream it across all the platforms so that you can, I forget what it's called, where you can stream on everything, YouTube, Facebook, Twitch at the same time. And I wanted to see, you have to try these things to know what works and what doesn't work. So like, how would you release a movie nowadays? Like, you have to try, you've done Vimeo, and so you know how you would do it differently next time. You have to try the theater approach to see, do people still go out for this? You know, is it worth it? Even if we have 100 people, that's dope. You know, do people still come out for that? You know, getting the feedback from the crowd is the most precious thing you can do. It's like a glorified, what do they call it? Like Disney does it, test audience, you know? And then the Twitch premiere would be, you know, people can tip for that. And so how much money can you make? You know, do you peak at 50 views? Like, you know, all these things. And then you do a Vimeo release or whatever. So like, it's a multiple run, right? It's kind of like touring your thing. And if you wanted, you could do the festival route. I don't care about that, me. I just don't think like, I don't know, Netflix is going to buy my thing. You know, I was going to film it on a Red and all that. And so I would have met the qualifications, but you just never know. You put it on Prime. It lives on Prime, you know, like my buddy Mark did. But like, you have to try everything to know what works and to find your audience. What if on Twitch it blows up? I mean, I don't know. What if I sell 200 tickets, you know, based on my email list and based on, you know, just cold calls and stuff like that at the border? I mean, I don't know, right? So you have to try everything. And like, at the end of the day, you want to make your money back and you want to make enough to make another one. That's all we can do.
Yeah. Yeah. No, speaking of which, I'm not sure if I told you the story yet, but whenever uh Dave came down to New York, he was talking with Graham and Andrew, and they were discussing her doppelganger. And after Dave told us how the her doppelganger premiere went, we were thinking like, what if the future for like smaller films is to kind of do like those micro premieres, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, of course. And also, like, you know, if you network well, you know, I've said this before, I think, you know, her doppelganger, we sold it out. It's so strange. Like, I look back, we were nobodies. No one knew who Knives Monroe was. The movie looked okay. So when it came to the Seven Hands of God premiere, I thought, you know, it's going to sell itself. And half the people
Yeah.
showed up with Seven Hands of God. And I remember thinking, like, well, why? You know, the movie was shot on a Red. It looked better. You know, we promoted it pretty okay. And it occurred to me that, no, when I was selling her doppelganger, when I was pushing it, promoting it, I showed up to people's houses. I was going to people's houses. I was calling people. Everybody I knew and could know, I called to show up. And I think that's why they did. So, you know, your little crew, that sounds condescending, but you know what I mean? Like you, Andrew, and
Yeah.
Graham, like, know a lot of people. And so I think you guys could get 400 or 500 people to show up. You know, I really do. If you care, don't expect them to. You're not entitled to them to show up. But truthfully, man, like if you sell it, you market it right, you have teasers, trailers, posters, you're doing podcasts, you're doing promotion, you're showing it to critics, people that you trust, blah blah blah. Go on other people's podcasts. Like if you guys push it, yeah, you can make your money back. Like how much is Fernie and Luca? How much did it cost? Under 10, right?
Oh yeah, yeah, for
I
sure.
mean, so you can make your money back, and that's all we can do, man. And like the goal is hopefully you just get really really good. You got to get good at it, and so and then you attract the right people that want you to do something for them and so on. Like that's how this game goes. It's just a long one. It's a long game. I don't know what Dave said about all that, but we just got lucky that model worked for us at that time. We were so lucky, and it was strange. Like we didn't pay for any advertising or anything, and it was just like it really spoiled me. I can't say for Dave, but it spoiled me and just thinking, oh yeah, so the next time it's gonna happen again. But no, you have to sell your pants off every single time, and if you have a good product, it makes the sales part easy. Surely you believe in the thing that you love. Truthfully, man, like I found the hardest part of filmmaking is like once you have it in the can, it's easy. Like I think the sale part, marketing part is easy. It's it's um it's not compromising and making the thing that you want and loving the thing that you have. That's the hard part. Like what were moments in guys like us where you're like, "Oh, I got that. I got that shot. That's all I need. I got a movie because I got that shot or I got that sequence or this actor said this thing. Ooh, that's I'm gonna build everything around that because I got that in the can, or like, you know what I mean? Like, what were moments that were like first downs for you?
Oh man, it's kind of well for me. I kind of knew. So the first thing we shot wasn't in the film, so that kind of tells you how it began. And then the next thing we shot, it was a scene between Alex and PO3, and it was a really good scene. Like we shot it well. It had the things I wanted, and I kind of felt it was good. And then I want to say later because because the first half of Guys Like Us was shot with one camera, and the second half was shot with another camera. So early on, there was a scene between Alex and PO3. It's like the big emotional scene in the movie where like Alex is like, "You can't wrestle, you're crippled or whatever," and he like walks off, and then PO3 gets pissed off, and then Alex gives him a hug, and I kind of knew after that I was like, "Oh, that was pretty good,"
Mm,
And then the wrestling scenes were really early on, and I
mm-hmm,
kind of thought those were pretty badass. Uh, but it was for me, it wasn't so much like there was a scene where I was like, "Oh, that's good." It was more so like my confidence got built up after every scene itself. Like by the time I went back to Westlaco to film the office stuff with Christian and Jesse, it was like everything was clicking. I was like, "Oh man, we got this like tracking shot to work."
yeah,
When like we tried that on the first day, it was never gonna work. But
yeah,
I knew that it could work because we had just done like 10,
yeah,
11 days of shooting,
yep,
and I know what's possible.
yep. That's the best feeling, man. I miss that. I really do.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah,
Same here. That's kind of why I've been wanting to make a movie. Like I wasn't like where you were at, but I had like written the script about it was a good idea too, so I just kind of say it. But it was like it was going to be about these two artists from Texas, right? Like painters, like Laura, who came to New York, but they were kind of having a bad go at it, and they decide that they want to kind of like moonlight as like underground fighters because this was back when New York City. There was going to be like a shorter period piece.
mm-hmm,
It was going to be back when like New York City wasn't allowing legalized MMA. So in my fictionalized world, like there was like these underground tournaments, and they were using that to kind of make money. But one of them ends up being a pretty good fighter, and the other kind of washes out. And the one that kind of washes out starts painting the fighting, blood, the brutality, and
mm,
his paintings start getting big, and that kind of forms a rift between the friendship. That one person is like getting killed for like dimes, and this guy's painting that and getting like a lot of money. And it
mm-hmm.
was going to be a pretty cool movie, but unfortunately, I have to kind of put a pause on it.
It's hard, man. Like one thing that's happened over the past, and that does sound like a good movie. It just sounds like hard to make, right? In my
Yeah,
opinion, it sounds
yeah,
expensive.
exactly.
It sounds expensive. Dude, it's so cheap to make a movie, a really pretty, like good looking, good sounding one is what I mean. Technically, like it's so cheap, it's so fucking cheap. That's what drives me crazy. I don't care anymore, and I used to for a very long time, more than anything, about like this movie is gonna be the one that like gets me on Conan O'Brien. You know, whatever
Yeah,
success looks
yeah,
like. I
yeah.
don't care
I used
about
to be that way too.
I don't care about that anymore. The I just want cool people to think it's cool. You know, cool people that I like, that I respect. It's like wrestling. Like I just want the boys in the locker room and the girls to be like good match and shake my hand. That's all I care about. um, and it's so cheap to make a movie. Like, dude, you could, if you know what you're doing, like you could rent an Alexa or a Red and for a couple days, and we know how to do it now. Like get all the shots, and once you have the footage, like go chop something up. And I've never been like I didn't make my I made my first feature in 2012, and I made a second feature in 2014, and then I made my first short film in 2015. Like I went backwards, and I was like, oh, short films are cool. Short films are where it's at. I remember thinking like, oh, I can make short films, and also to the public, they don't care. People are gonna watch everything on their phones anyways, and so um, you can make a gorgeous looking short film. What's the whole purpose of making a 75-minute movie anyways? That
Yeah, there's
paradigm
no
has
purpose.
is totally changed. Hey, if it's 5 hours, cool. If it's 15 minutes, then that's what it is, right? But there's all these little incentives to me that drive me crazy because I'm like, look, 20-year-old me, if I had what I have now, I'd be making a fucking movie. Right now is like it drives you crazy as a creative to be shackled and you can't do it. Um, but that's why I asked you, man, and I'm gonna try my best to support whatever it is you do. And so, let me know when that movie comes out, man. I want to support it. I think Andrew's like a really um, good visual storyteller, better than me. Like it's terrible. I should never like DP my own stuff, but but like I've had to do everything. Like I would love to just. It seems so bougie to just tell someone like, can you get this shot? Can you get this shot? Can you get? Hey, I'm gonna direct the actors, and then tell an editor, yeah, can you do this? I've had to do everything, and so it's hard, and that's why, my products look and sound like shit like sometimes, but y'all and your crew is just so cool, and so protect that, and I hope everybody's safe and healthy down up there, and we're gonna get through this, and I cannot fucking wait. Hopefully, it doesn't last forever, but I want to go back, and I'm gonna really appreciate like hugging people a lot more when this is over.
Oh yeah, same.
All right, man. So, thanks so much for coming on the podcast. I'm glad we started off talking about the Snyder cut, and now here we are. I can't have a conversation with you without bringing up guys like us. So sorry about that. It's just gonna
It's
be what
fine.
it's gonna be. Keep making TikToks,
Uh,
man.
oh yeah, well, I was having so much fun doing it too, so hopefully I can find inspiration again.
Yeah, do that. I love you, man. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Okay, I love you too, man. See ya.
Take care, bro.